Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days in today's video, which will be taking us towards the end of January, towards 26th, 27th of January, so going towards the end of the first month of 2014, can you believe? Going to have a look at the 500 with our height anomaly flow charts. We're going to have a look at the more general charts after that as well. Now, before I get on with that, just to talk about the advertising. There's video ads on my page at GazWebBiz.com. If you hit play on the video ad, you'll be supporting GazWebBiz.com. Thanks very much for doing that. It does make a big difference to the website. It helps to pay for the website, it supports the website. So by you hitting play on the video ad and getting involved in the ads, you're helping to support GazWebBiz.com and essentially helping to pay for me to have a website and sit here to talk to you via the website. So thanks very much for doing that. So we're going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the next 8 to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF on the left. The GFS is on the right. 500 millibars is an area in the atmosphere, 80,000 feet, where weather is taking place. High pressure, low pressure are developing and being moved around by the jet stream running above, and essentially that is what weather is, the movement of air by the jet stream. The blue colours indicating below average temperature at 18,000 feet, which extrapolates to high pressure. The orange and red colours the orange and red colours are above average temperatures at 18,000 feet, which extrapolates to high pressure. So this, I say, is for the anomaly for 8 to 10 days time, taking us to around 27th, 28th of January. And look at this, we've got another very deep trough of low pressure sitting across central and eastern parts of the United States, going right way down into the southeast of the states, also covering much of eastern Canada as well. That's another very cold trough sitting across central and eastern parts of the USA. And you're wondering where winter is, where all the cold weather has gone this winter. It has been and continues to be and will continue to be in the north and the northeast and the east of the United States. Really cold air digging in across northern and eastern parts of the states. That cold air then pulls out into the Atlantic, runs over the warm ocean and blows up the jet stream. So the jet stream indicated by these tight lines just here running across the Atlantic, and then we come up to British Isles and we get a bit of a problem because we've got this area of high pressure sitting up to the northeast over Scandinavia and western parts of Russia. So the jet stream sort of comes up against that block and it kind of splits. We get some of the energy going off to the north into that high pressure, helping to inflate the high pressure really, and some of the energy goes off to the south around this cut-off area of low pressure sitting to the south of the country. Now, just a few hundred miles with this makes a big difference because we've got this area of high pressure in the Atlantic. That's a warm area of high around the area of high pressure around the Azores. So that's trying to bring the mild air in from the Atlantic. This high pressure over Scandinavia is trying to bring cold air in from the east. And I say just a few hundred miles makes a big difference to this. And that's why miles have been chopping and changing a lot in recent days. Some days going for quite cold easterlies. Some days putting us in that very mild or certainly mild westerly flow. So it's a difficult pattern to be deciphering, but I think we are going to see some colder weather coming along in the second half of next week as this area of high pressure from the northeast just starts to extend a little bit more of an influence. It's not going to be the depths of winter, it's not going to be widespread sort of snow covering the whole country, nothing like that. But it is going to be cooler, I think, later next week perhaps than we've had for some time. The GFS just very quickly backing up what we see on the ECMWF with that cold trough of low pressure sitting across eastern and northeastern parts of the states, going down into the southeast of the states actually. So really cold there. Going to be more widespread snow, severe frost going on in the north of the eastern states. Then we get the strong jet stream coming across the Atlantic, really being blown up by that cold air. And then again, it's the idea that we get to the British Isles, we've got the blocking area of high pressure up to the northeast, so the jet stream is sort of splitting with some of the energy going up to the north and some going down to the south around that cut-off area of low pressure. So both sort of in agreement about the overall pattern for the next 8 to 10 days time, but it's very, very subtle differences that will make big differences to our weather. Now, don't be too alarmed by this. I'm just going to very quickly show you the temperature ensemble for New York City, just to back up what we were seeing there. Very cold temperatures coming up to them. Once again, remember the red line here is where we should be on these GFS temperature ensembles. Red line where we should be. They're going to be well below that over the next couple of weeks. Some really cold weather on the way by the looks of it for the eastern states, for New York. And it's a very similar situation for Chicago. Actually, this is the temperature ensemble for Chicago. Again, red line where they should be at this time of year, and for the next 2 weeks, basically, apart from one very little brief warm up, now 20th of January, it's going to be a very cold week coming up in Chicago, and that's going to be the case for most of the north and the east of the states in the next couple of weeks. Now, as far as our temperature ensemble goes, it's nowhere near as dramatic as that, thankfully, or maybe some of you will be a bit disappointed if you want some cold weather. But we are seeing a bit of a cooling trend here in the ensemble. So, again, the red line where we should be, and we're going to be a little bit above average, actually, for the next few days. Not a great deal above average, but certainly a little bit above average in terms of those upper air temperatures. But once we get to around the 20th, 21st of January, definitely signs of a cooling trend then, going a little bit below average. And that stays with us through in towards around the 25th, and then we start to get lots of scatter from around the 25th. We've got some members going very mild, some do actually go very cold, one or two very cold outliers there as we go through towards the end of the month. But that's sort of too much scatter to really draw much into. But certainly up to around the 23rd, 24th, I think we can say we're starting off mild, and then seeing a bit of a cooling trend coming through. Precipitation spikes show that there is going to be more precipitation coming up over the next couple of weeks. The temperature anomalies for the next week, taking us from Thursday the 16th to Thursday the 23rd of January, show that we're going to be basically near normal. Now, much of northern and northeast Europe has turned very cold now. We've got the blue colours well in trade there across much of Scandinavia and into western parts of Russia as well. Also quite chilly down across Spain and Portugal, but the rest of Europe actually quite mild, and particularly in the southeast of Europe where that those very warm temperature anomalies go on. But coming back to us anyway, that's just sort of going off on a bit of a tangent. Coming back to us, we're very much near normal. Scotland a little bit below average, England and Wales perhaps very slightly above average, but generally we're around the seasonal normal there. I think what's going on is that the first part is starting off quite mild at the moment and going into the weekend, but the second part through next week is turning a little bit colder, as we saw on that temperature anomaly chart. So having a look at the GFS generic charts next, and for the middle of next week, we're basically still under the same pattern that we're under today, but in terms of the broad theme, which is the high pressure up over Scandinavia, the low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing weather systems through across the country. So it's staying very unsettled into next week with more rain at times as the low pressure comes up against that high pressure over Scandinavia. Now, what I think is going to happen, and what the models are indicating today anyway, is that low pressure is going to start to move southeastwards later next week, and possibly introduce some sort of east to northeasterly flow. Now, this isn't particularly cold. I've had a look at the upper air temperatures. Here they are, actually. And we're only really bringing cold air in towards Scotland, although it is cooler across all parts. But the proper cold air is coming in towards Scotland. So it isn't particularly cold. Nevertheless, it's probably cold enough to produce some wintry showers, particularly for the north and the northeast of the country. And anywhere could get a sleety shower from that. The dew points showing that Scotland, Northern Ireland could be below freezing with those dew points later next week, but England and Wales staying above. But it's too far away from that kind of detail anyway. But notice how cold it is up across Scandinavia and western parts of Russia. Really bitterly cold air up there associated with that area of high pressure. It wouldn't take much of an adjustment really to start to pull some of that very cold air in, so we do have to keep an eye on it. I don't think we're going to turn it very cold, because we go through to day 10, which is Sunday the 26th. We're actually going to bring this next area of low pressure through, and by the look of it, and that's going to introduce much milder westerly winds again as the high pressure from Scandinavia starts to collapse. So that's quite a way off, and we can't be all that certain about that, although it is the pattern of the winter really, which is to run that jet stream in off the Atlantic. But certainly for a few days later next week, I think we could bring in some cooler air from the east. Now, this is the ECMWF, that's GFS, this is the ECMWF Finally, below pressure coming across the country through the middle of next week. That could bring a lot of heavy rain with it, by the way, so we've got to be careful about that. There's a high pressure up over Scandinavia, and it's the same idea from the east as a GFS, which is to take that low pressure down across the country and eventually introduce this east to northeasterly winds. So by the time you get through to Friday the 24th of January, there we are in an easterly flow. It's not a particularly cold one, but it is cooler, and it would be producing overnight frost, possibly some wintry showers as well. And we're trying to extend a ridge from the Azores high to the Scandinavian high. That's trying to set up a big area of high pressure around the British Isles, but it's battling against this jet stream running in off the Atlantic. And eventually, as we get through to day 10, Sunday the 26th, it's the same idea really as the GFS, which is we reintroduce that westerly wind as the high pressure begins to collapse down to the south and southeast. So any cooler conditions later next week, probably only lasting a day or two, and then it's back to westerlies. And look how much purple we've got up over Greenland, Iceland, up in towards the Arctic. That is the polar vortex. You heard about the polar vortex in association with the cold air that they had in America last week. Some very strange comments about that, by the way, so don't want to get involved in that particular tangent, but that is the polar vortex anyway over Greenland and Iceland, and that's churning away, very intense polar vortex, and that's reintroducing this westerly wind, and the high pressure is really battling against that polar vortex and the strong jet stream. And that's why its days are numbered, really, the high pressure. After just 2 or 3 days it all collapses and we revert back to that westerly flow. Now whether that's actually right, we'll have to wait and see. It's the pattern of the winter, which is that we have got a very strong westerly coming across the Atlantic this winter, so you wouldn't be surprised if that is how it pans out. Really, any high pressure very quickly getting swamped by the westerlies. Nevertheless, for a few days later next week, I think we could get some cooler weather coming in from the east or the northeast, possibly producing some frost, maybe some wintry showers in the north and the east. Before we get to that though, lots more unsettled weather to come, and overall in terms of the broad sort of picture across the northern hemisphere, there's no sign really of a tremendous sort of change, which is what we need if we want to produce a prolonged cold spell. There's no sign of anything particularly changing in terms of the broad pattern. The very cold areas entrenched across the northern and eastern parts of the states. Consequently, we get that very strong jet stream running across the Atlantic with the strong polar vortex over Greenland. And it basically means that any sort of high pressure that tries to set up around Scandinavia or anywhere in terms of the northern latitudes across Eurasia, any high pressure that's trying to set up there is battling against that westerly wind, and there's no sign of any particular change to that broad pattern for the time being. So a few days of colder or cooler weather later next week, but overall nothing particularly cold or severe or wintry coming up in the near future. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.